The Magnificent Battle, Merlin, Arthur's Court, and the Mistress of Time, by the Magus. Read by the Magus. Chapter 4. Revelation of Power. The revelations of the Great Mother were always true, but also always perplexing, and too easily misunderstood. The Council of Elders, the powerful agents of light and counterweight to the evil and ignorance of men, had been uncertain as to the meaning. There were two springs. They were fairly certain that they knew the identity of the one that arises from the mists of the present. Such a child was born more than a dozen years ago. He had been born with great wizarding power, but was hidden for his protection, so that he could grow to manhood. When the invisibility spell had run its course, he could be found, but not only by them, but also by the evil one who sought his destruction. He must be found and protected. He must survive. As to Cassiopeia, they surmised that it referred to using it as a guide in the darkness of unknowing of the future. But the guide in the night sky was the North Star, not Cassiopeia. There were 5 stars visible in Cassiopeia, but most likely the Great Mother was referring to the constellation itself as a single entity, as it did not seem necessary or even possible to find 5 stars hiding in the future. And combining them with one in the present, it would mean either 5 life-threatening trips into the future or bringing 5 stars back on a single return voyage. Such tasks would not only involve the dangers of the voyage of knowing, but also making a rip in the fabric of time that had never been accomplished. That, the council determined, must not be what was intended. The council decided there must be one powerful mage in the future, represented by the constellation. Perhaps the reference to Cassiopeia meant that the one was a woman, perhaps a very beautiful woman, but a female mage of great power. In any case, the mage must be found. The Great Mother had said that only by combining of the power of the present with the power of the future could the evil be extinguished. Someone must take the voyage of knowing and travel into the future to find this mage. She, perhaps he, must be brought back from a far distant future. A difficult, dangerous, and quite possibly a deadly task. The one to be sent must be the one whose magic is greatest. This, of course, or so they decided, was the High Priestess. It was she who ruled the council and who drank the sacred drink that carried her on the voyage of knowing into the future, though she had never before sailed out of sight of the land of the present. She would go and seek the one of whom the Great Mother spoke. Preparations were made for the journey. At the meeting of the council, in the dark of night, amid the stones of a smaller, lesser-known, but equally powerful circle, the High Priestess took the chalice and drank the potion. She shivered for a moment, as if suddenly chilled, and swayed on her stone seat, then sat immobile. Numbness enveloped her body, and it seemed to fall away. Then she, not her body, but something in her, call it soul, spirit, psyche, something in her left to explore a bewildering, distant future. She began slowly, drifting out of the harbor of the present as a ship would flow with the tide. Her mind was clear, but her eyes were watered and glazed, nearly burned by the evil that was growing there. She could sense the stark gloominess of the world around the evil, saw in the smoke the deadened faces of those who fell under her spell, and worst of all, she saw the curve of history turn toward dark obscurity. Yes, turning toward the distant horizon, she could see that it was history that the evil one wanted to change, and the destruction of the power of the Council of Elders, the counterbalance to her evil. The vision continued, with multiple possibilities. And in one, the stones of this circle were scattered, windblown, and desolate. She became dizzy. She struggled to maintain her vision and to see through the darkness, first to find in the present the hope for the future, then in the future the answer for the evil in the present. She slowly floated from the harbor of her time, watching the shore of the familiar recede. As she went, she searched for the one who was to be found close to shore. She hoped that she could pierce the veil of invisibility that protected him from evil. There were clues. He was a young boy. It was he who carried great Magus potential and the promise of great power to save the future. He must survive. He was the hope of the present, and if he survived, he would be the ancestor of the great power of the future. The second for whom she searched was in the future, a far distant shore in time, with only Cassiopeia as a guide. If found, the High Priestess then must find a way to warp time, to bring this one back in time. One thing was clear. There must be a merging of present and future. That is, the boy in the present and the one from the future foretold in the prophecy must be brought together to combat the darkness. Only by uniting their strengths could they succeed. She searched the present, but the invisibility shield held and hid the boy from detection, including by the High Priestess. Then the sails billowed in the blustering wind of time, and she encountered the powerful swells in the open ocean of the future. The priestess lifted her eyes and searched for hope. The potion in the chalice sent her skipping across the surface of time, more like a rock skipping on a pond than a ship on the ocean. She felt the moorings of her sanity shaken as she encountered the visions of the future. There were glimpses of events, a blur of faces, battles, and horrors of war, then small islands of tranquility. She saw ebb and flow, broad horizons, distant landscapes, as if her view were from afar above, not the nightly details of quest, search, and battle. She was lost in a vast maze of possibilities. The goal was clear, but she was a priestess, neither a knight nor a foot soldier. The visions were overwhelming. She sought to scream, but there was no breath. Her face contorted and her body writhed at the magnitude of the suffering she encountered and at the thought of failure. Still, she struggled to see clearly, but the one she sought seemed not yet to have emerged from the masses she encountered. She saw a faint glow ahead, which could be a glimmer of promise, or perhaps only a false dawn. There were signs, or, she wondered, were they only the broken reeds of unconquerable hope in the face of despair? If there were signs, they were obscure, dim, and not yet ready. She set sail looking for two, one from the present, one from the future. Search as she would, she found neither. Quickly depleting her energy, she attempted to return to her present. She found that she had gone so far that the cumulative effect was beyond exhausting. She collapsed. The air and smoke around her crackled and hissed. The elders gathered around her, but feared to touch her for the power she contained. No one came to her aid. With a gasp, she breathed again. Slowly, she came back to herself, realizing her failure, that her power was not yet complete. She struggled with words. "Send for Merlin," was all she could say.